When you think of champagne, immediate thoughts of celebrations and luxury come to mind, and that's part of what makes champagne a brand in its own right, with its own identity. Welcome to Champagne and Affordable Alternatives. Today we'll look into what makes champagne champagne and why other sparkling wines can never be champagne. And if you love champagne as much as I do, we'll even explore affordable alternatives all the way through to those which are closer priced to champagne. If it wasn't grown, produced and bottled in Champagne, it's not champagne. But to provide more accurate context, it has to be made from certain grape varieties that are grown in Champagne and produced according to specific winemaking techniques. The CIVC plays a Herculean role and is responsible for safeguarding the reputation of Champagne worldwide. Champagne has protected designation of origin status under EU laws, and no other sparkling wine can use the name Champagne. If you haven't heard of counterfeit wines, they exist, and the latest scandal in Europe was in 2022 when 35,000 hectoliters, that's the equivalent of 4.6 million bottles, of Spanish wines were brought into France to be passed off as French wines, including that of Bordeaux. But the greatest wine forger of our times has to be Rudy Kurniawan, and you can check out the scandal in the video Sour Grapes. And speaking of the use of the name Champagne, if you're even thinking of using the name, think twice or thrice. In April this year, 2,400 cans of Miller High Life beer with the tagline "The Champagne of Beers" was destroyed by Belgian customs at the request of the CIVC. Did you know that champagne was an accidental discovery? The harsh winters caused fermenting wines to pause as the yeast went into hibernation thanks to the cold. The wines often still contained fermentable sugars, as the yeast didn't get to finish their meal, but of course, winemakers back then weren't aware of this and happily bottled their wines. When autumn came, temperatures warmed up and the yeast awoke hungry and continued their feasts, what is now known as the second fermentation. Now, yeast produce carbon dioxide as a byproduct of fermentation. Now, where do you think the carbon dioxide went? With no escape path, and when glass bottles and cork stoppers were not as durable or as advanced, the bottles literally exploded, hence the name, the devil's wine. See how all these bottles are stacked? What do you think happens when a single bottle from the stack, say the middle, explodes? A whole lot of mayhem and a room filled with disaster. I'll leave it to your imagination. For the longest time, these precious bubbles were seen as a flaw, and all efforts were made to avoid them, including by the esteemed Dom Perignon, who has been widely marketed to be the inventor of sparkling wines. "Come quickly, I'm tasting the stars," supposedly said Dom Perignon when he first tasted champagne. According to our dear friend Wikipedia, this was likely to be part of the exaggerated fable where he had created champagne, and was actually a quote first seen in an advertisement in the late 19th century. Dom Perignon is the French Benedictine monk whom the globally acclaimed vintage champagne from the house of Moet Chandon is named after. After all, he was the famed cellar master of the Benedictine Abbey in Haute-Villas. These champagnes are so prestigious that they're only made in the best vintages and in limited quantities. Since its first vintage in 1921, there have only been 42 subsequent vintages, the last of which was 2013, released earlier this year. Expect to pay a minimum of €265 upwards for a single bottle of Dom Perignon, which used to be one of the staple champagnes for first class in Singapore Airlines, but it's been discontinued. One of the most expensive Dom Perignon champagnes till date is a 1959 Rosé, which sold for a cool $84,700. But more importantly, I'll bet you didn't know that champagne was not the first sparkling wine ever made, unless you watch one of my previous videos in champagne. Blanquette de Limoux from the Languedoc in the south of France was the first sparkling wine in the world. Dating back to 1531, we have the Benedictine monks to thank for this invention. Capturing the sparkle, or as the French say, once the alcoholic fermentation is complete and the winemaker has decided whether or not MLF should take place and in which permutations, it's time to blend the base wine and bottle them in their final homes that they will be sold in. The liqueur de tirage, which is a mixture of still wine, yeast and sugars, is added to kickstart the second fermentation. Here's where some of you may go, ew, but it's a cycle of life, and it's actually what gives champagnes its signature patisserie-like aromas and flavors that are reminiscent of toast, rich bread dough, and brioche. In wine geek terms, these are known as tertiary aromas and flavors. The yeast that were kind enough to ferment the wines will slowly but surely start to die as there are no more food or nutrients for them, coupled with the fact that the higher alcohol environment is not conducive for them. The dead yeast are known as lees, and the process of them decomposing is called autolysis. The decomposing molecules will interact with the wine and the very limited amount of oxygen that permeates slowly into the bottle. This gradually transforms the wine chemically, enhancing and altering textures, aromas, and flavors. Surely you didn't think that you'd be sold a bottle of champagne with a dead lees in them? You would have shrieked in horror. The process of riddling gradually loosens and deposits the sediments into the neck of the bottle to make removal easier. The bottles are turned upside down on racks, typically wooden, which are known as pupitre. If done manually, a professional rumier or bottle turner, it's an actual profession, will rotate these bottles in teensy increments. Think 1/4 or 1/8 of a turn each time. It is that precise and gentle. It takes between 4 to 6 weeks, and the best rumiers are known to turn up to 40,000 bottles per day. Talk about an arm workout. As you can imagine, industrial giants who churn out millions of bottles cannot wait that 4 to 6 weeks, and they rely on machines called gyro pallets, designed to get the job done pronto, say in a week's time or less. It's now time to get rid of the dead lees, which are flash frozen as bottlenecks are plunged into an icy bath of approximately -27 degrees Celsius. The bottle is easily opened thanks to the built-up pressure as the plug is eased out, taking with it a small amount of wine. For those of you who are bargain hunters, don't worry, you'll still get 750 milliliters of champagne. But I have a fun fact to share. Have you ever wondered why champagne capsules are significantly longer than other types of wine? The protective foil that covers the neck and cork of the bottle is also known as the capsule and assures you that the wine has not been tampered with. Back in the day, champagne bottles were topped up manually, resulting in uneven levels of fill. And to prevent consumers from noticing this, they simply use longer capsules. This has since been adopted by sparkling wine producers all across the world. The dosage or liqueur d'expedition is a mixture of cane sugar dissolved in wine that is used to top up the bottle before corking to make up for the loss. This dosage also serves two other purposes. Firstly, it defines the final level of sweetness of the champagne, and secondly, it has the ability of elevating the aromas and flavors of the champagne or even ironing out any imbalances. In the case of brut nature or zero dosage, there is no added sugar in the liqueur d'expedition. If the aim is to elevate the champagne, the chef de cave or the head winemaker may opt to use an old vintage reserve wine as the dosage, or if he or she is already happy with the champagne, then they might just decide to use a more neutral wine. This is the only time when a champagne bottle is ever shaken, and vigorously at that. Of course, it is first corked and secured with a wire seal that is known as a muselet. This helps to mix the dosage harmoniously with the wine. And if you'd like to learn an easy way to open a bottle of sparkling wine without hurting yourself or anyone else, do check out my video up here. And here's yet another fun fact. The next time you're untwisting the muselet on a bottle of sparkling wine, there should be exactly 6 twists. In more youthful expressions, expect fresh citrus green and occasionally stone fruits, complemented with some floral notes, especially white flowers. If it's a rosé champagne, you may expect fresh red and sometimes dark berries. These primary flavors will always be accompanied by some tertiary aromas, such as toast, freshly baked bread, hay, yeastiness, and some nuttiness. And if any of the wines had undergone malolactic fermentation, then you can expect some creamy, buttery notes. The bubbles, or in geek terms, mousse, will be delicate and constant. This is a system that's unique to Champagne, although there's been some talk of applying a similar concept in the south of France due to recent unpredictable and smaller harvests. In most vintages, and especially generous ones, a portion of the best wines will be set aside by each house for future use. This provides champagne producers more stability against climatic conditions which are beyond their control, ensuring that they will always be able to produce a certain volume of champagnes year in, year out, regardless of the climate. You might have noticed me using the term house on several occasions in this video, and that's because in Champagne, producers are known as maisons, which translates loosely into houses, just like how in Burgundy, producers are known as domains, and in Bordeaux, chateaux. There is a more precise definition by the Champagne Union, where only 24 brands are officially entitled to use this term. Champagne is all about the subtle art of blending. Wines from different grape varieties, from different parcels of vineyards, some would have undergone malolactic fermentation and others not, are blended with reserve wines from different years to create a masterpiece. In non-vintage champagnes, creating the house style year on year is crucial. You can always expect these aromas and flavors in champagne, as non-vintage champagnes have to be aged for a minimum of 15 months, 12 of which must be on lease, and in the case of vintage champagnes, they have to be aged on the lease for a minimum of 3 years. In practice, most champagne producers mature their champagnes for a longer duration, say 2 to 3 years for non-vintage wines and between 4 to 10 years for vintage champagnes. There's Mercier Demi-Sec, which appears to be as economical as $1.17 in Argentina and averages $7 on Wine Searcher. I've never tried it, nor will I be likely to buy it, but if someone offers me a glass of it, I'll taste it and I'll let you know what I think. Growers champagnes, that is smaller producers that grow their own grapes and produce their own champagne, offer great value for money and quality, and you can expect to pay 21 euros upwards in the EU. My top recommendation for growers champagne is Collard Picard. I met the couple several years ago and I was blown by the quality and taste of their champagnes. I was eager to get their champagnes on board the airline whose wine program I was managing, but sadly that never happened. Their exceptional champagnes start from 40 euros upwards depending on which part of the EU you're in. Another great quality and value for money growers champagne is Lallier, and prices start from 30 euros upwards in the EU. When it comes to Grand Marque champagnes, that is one of the 24 brands that are allowed to use the term champagne house, my favorite has to be Charles Heidsieck, and prices start from 45 euros upwards. Some of the most extraordinary champagnes that I've enjoyed come from the same house or extended house, and that is Ra and Blanc de Millennium. Simply stunning. Terms like traditional method, method champenois, metodo traditional, metodo classico, and method cat classic all imply that the wines are made in a similar method as champagne, with the second fermentation in the bottle and some contact with the lees. From the most economical to the higher side of prices, here are some alternatives. If you're in Portugal, you're in for a treat. Full-price traditional method local sparkling wines can go as low as €3.49 per bottle. Now, I haven't tried this brand, but I've tried Fita Azul from the Trás os Montes region in Alto Douro, and they make me happy. Don't expect any tertiary patisserie-like aromas and flavors, but they're fruity, fun, and really delicious. They've even been awarded 85 points by wine enthusiasts and have won numerous awards. Yet another brand that I've been very happy with is Vila de Corgos. A staple top-notch brand that you'll find in a lot of restaurants in Porto is Terras do Demo. They cost between 18 to 26 euros in restaurants and are priced as low as €7.50 in bottle shops. This sparkling wine offers the best value for money and quality in my opinion. Typically made from a blend of 3 grapes, Jarello, Parellada, and Macabeo, this wine comes from the Penedès region in Catalonia, Spain. Expect to pay as little as €6 in Spain, and we're talking full price here. I'm in Portugal, and cava at bottle shops, full price, would be around €7, but when they go on sale at local supermarket chains, they can be as economically priced as €5. The French alternative to champagne from any of the 8 permitted regions with a minimum of 9 months maturation on the lease. They go for as low as €8 per pop in the EU. This is South Africa's take on traditional method sparkling wines. Expect to pay €20 upwards if you're in the EU, and in the UK, £10 upwards. They're typically made from the 3 key champagne grape varieties, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier, but they can also be found in South Africa's premier white grape versions, Chenin Blanc. This is the Italian version of champagne. They go for as little as €12.50 online in Italy, and they're typically made from Chardonnay, Pinot Nero, which is the local name for Pinot Noir, and Pinot Bianco or Pinot Blanc. The favorite sparkling wine in the UK is none other than Prosecco. Big brands such as Mionetto go for as low as €4.80 online in Italy. If you're a fan of fresh and fruity flavors, champagne may not be your cup of tea, especially not the aged vintage ones, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. Drink what you like and not what others like. Prosecco, which is known for its fruitiness and floral notes, may be just right up your alley. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of champagne and affordable alternatives. You don't have to spend a fortune to drink good quality bubblies and on a regular basis, unless you have all the money and you want to do so. If you'd like to learn about the different bubblies that are available at different budgets, and definitely some that you've never heard of, do check out my video up here. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to like the video or leave me a comment. And until our next rendezvous, here's to amazing health.